guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled "E-Time I Bought a $500 Car." Alright, so I was listening to the daily Dark Fluff upload and it reminded me of something I haven't thought about in a long time. This is the story of how I bought a 2004 Mazda RX-8 Shinka edition for $500 in 2008. In 2008 I was 21. Craigslist was still the website for everything from cars to hookups and America wasn't quite freaking me out yet. The RX-8 hit the market in 2003 and I fell in love with the way they looked immediately. However, they were stickered from around $35K for a base model and I was a 16-year-old kid from a lower-class family at the time. I spent years in high school delivering pizza and helping out with my uncle on the weekends at the shop he worked at. Anything to get a few more dollars for my super cool race car. At the time I had bought a second-gen Eclipse GSX and truly had no idea just how cool this car was. Every night I would lay in bed before sleep and look at cars listed on Craigslist for sale. My girlfriend of the time often complained. You know, gearhead stuff. By 2008 I was an ASE certified mechanic and had been driving a tow truck for a little over 3 years. One night while laying in bed with my then GF I came across an ad for a 2004 RX-8 Shinka, black on a set of chrome aftermarket, but knockoff wheels. It looked great. However, the ad explained that it had a blown motor and would need to be replaced and was not covered by warranty. Having been in love with these cars, and the older models of the RX-7 and Cosmo, I knew a lot about them. You see, Mazda's RX line have special engines in them, they're rotary motors instead of pistons like a 4-cylinder or V8. I also happened to be a certified rotary tech. I contacted the seller and asked why he thought the motor was blown and he responded with something like, "I'm a mechanic and own a shop. We've had the car for a few months and cannot get it running. These dang rotaries are weird and known to blow up. It's blown, I know it is." I asked him if I could come meet him in the morning and look the car over and he agreed. I originally rode down alone and looked the car over. From henceforth M equals entitled mechanic. Me. "Hey man, if I'm able to fix it for you, would you be willing to make me some kind of deal?" "I'm pretty Sue." M cutting me off. "No, it has a blown motor, either give me $500 or I'm not selling it." Me. "Yeah but, I'm a cert." M. "I don't care what you are, only if you have $500. Me. "Okay, does it start at all?" M. "It will start and run for about a minute but shuts off again, or if you try to move it it dies and won't start for hours afterward." Me. "Okay, I'm gonna look it over, here's $500. I looked the car over, did a compression test on the motor which came back good and proceeded to do a Mazda's built-in system to cycle the motor, which pushes all excess fluids out of the motor when flooded. This took little more than pumping the brake 25 times while in accessory after turning the key on. I let the car run for about 45 seconds and shut it off, already having the key and title. I explained I'd be back that night to pick it up and asked what time he closed, as his lot was gated. M told me he'd be around until about 6:30 and I agreed to be there at 6 p.m. We parted ways for the day. While I was at work I called up my brother-in-law who's also a mechanic and explained everything. Asked him to give me a ride down as it'd be much cheaper to pay his gas than pay for the diesel to run a tow truck down after work. We hopping into his Mustang around 4:50 and headed out. We parked right in front of the guy's shop and I walked in to tell him I was here to take the car and thank him. M. "When is your tow truck gonna be here? I don't have all night, kid. You're gonna have to push it out on the street if they take too long." Me. "Oh, no need for a tow truck. I brought a transport tag from my work. I tried to tell you I'm a mechanic, who actually specializes in these cars. There's nothing wrong with it. My brother is bolting a transport tag on it right now." M. "Bullcrap kid, that motor is blown. Get it off my lot." Me. "Have a nice day and thanks again for the car, man." I walked out and hopped into the RX-8, started it and followed my bro-in-law out of the lot. Looking in my rear view I could see M standing in his parking lot literally stomping on his hat. He had spiked like a football onto the pavement. When I got home I checked my email and had one from M demanding another $10K for the car as he didn't know it ran. I explained to him in the email. I attempted to tell you twice that I was a certified rotary tech and even offered to look the car over before buying it. You refused to even hear me, let alone acknowledge what I was saying. I understand that you are angry, but I don't care what you are. I gave you $500 as agreed. Have a nice night. Emailed me another 30+ times after this and I never responded. Hope he's doing well these days. I totaled the RX-8 in a not my fault accident in 2017. I do miss it, but I upgraded to a 1993 RX-7. The next story is titled Book Recommendations to Read to Children About Privilege, Less Fortunate, and Gifting. My 5-year-old daughter had a very entitled day yesterday of thinking she needed stuff and being upset when we told her no. The very last thing yesterday was that she wanted a new canopy for her bed because she was bored of her current one. My husband and I agree we need to not get her stuff, laughable this time of year. We are not rich at all. My husband is a schoolteacher, and I am an office worker at a non-profit substance abuse clinic. I have put a hold on parenting books on raising kids to prevent entitlement to help us. In addition, she also refuses to give up any toys she no longer plays with. I secretly purge them, but I fear I may be making things worse and causing her to hoard more. I would love to read to her books for those not as fortunate and encourage her to donate toys she no longer finds interesting, sparks joy. I would love for her to say, yes, you can give that away. Can you provide some book recommendations for her? The next story is titled Am I the A-hole for being mad that my landlord's car blocks my driveway? So, I've, F20, lived in my house for almost 4 years. It's a shared driveway and the landlord lives at the end, right next to my house. They are M65 and F65, and they have a lot of children who always visit. Just a bit of backstory, we were friends with them before and the man was the loveliest guy ever. My mum pays rent directly to him so there's no real estate agents involved, and nothing was signed. Now the man is lovely, but his wife is kind of an a-hole. They have lots of kids who always visit, 5 or so, and when we first moved in, they would always have their kids' cars blocking our driveway so I couldn't leave my house without asking them to move. They did this for months continuously despite always asking them to not do it. One day they finally stopped. Now 3 weeks ago the man tragically passed away. I'm devastated as he was absolutely amazing. Now because of this, the kids are always over to comfort the lady, understandable. And the car blocking my garage has started again. So far, they've done it 3 days in a row, and I've had to ask them to move every time. One of the days I asked the car to move, so he did, and I left. When I came back, he was parked in the exact same spot, still blocking my car from leaving. I had to ask him to move again, then when I parked in my garage he parked in the exact same spot, blocking my car for the 3rd time, without even asking me if I was going out again and if he could park there. There's plenty of street parking available so that's not the issue. I'm so fed up as they're being so entitled and using the man's death as an excuse to stop me from getting out my house. I told my mum that if they didn't stop, I'd call a tow truck because I'm that sick of it. I won't but I'd love to. I just want to know, am I the a-hole for getting mad? Every time I bring it up to my mum, she gets mad at me and says I need to have more tolerance, but I don't think so. Comment said not the a-hole. You should have to ask them to move every time you want to leave your driveway. It's shared. Both parties are allowed to use it. Another comment said not the a-hole. This sounds like a giant annoyance. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see when you're blocking someone in. Hopefully they find your need to use your own driveway annoying as well, and just start parking on the street. The next story is titled Paybacks Are. Well, you know. Once upon a time I worked in heaven. Heaven, anyway. I had an office with the other IT engineers that was inaccessible to end users, in fact to anyone who was not an IT engineer, except our director, who reported to the CIO. And this idyllic arrangement lasted for a few glorious, immensely productive and rewarding years. Then, the CIO decided to insert a manager between us and the director. I immediately smelled smoke, and where there's smoke there's the flames of hell to turn your little bit of heaven to ash. New manager is a total jackass, kid from a rich family, and had been hired by our marginally competent CIO with the specious claim that he'd been the director of IT for a smaller company some distance from our locale. It wasn't a large business, and director of IT for this place simply meant that there wasn't really an IT department aside from this clown, and it was really a jack-of-all-trades position. Not unusual for small companies, and it didn't mean that you weren't really good at your job, except he wasn't. And he was even worse as a manager. The first week he was there, he got to do my yearly performance review. You folks can already feel my pain, yeah? This guy doesn't even know me. All he has to do is say, well, this looks like you had a good year, here's the percentage the company is giving you as a salary increase, hope the coming year will be as good. Nope. Not jackass enough. Now, I'd had that fantastic year we all hope for, and I had a great deal of professional satisfaction from it. I'd implemented a robust new email system from start to finish. Spec'd out the hardware, licensed the software, racked it, wired it, configured it, tested it, and it hummed like the well-oiled machine I intended it to be, a thing of beauty and a joy to behold. And it wasn't my only expert accomplishment for the year, it was simply my biggest. I'd earned 5 out of 5 on my review, and I knew it, walking on water, as they say. Jackass couldn't change the review, but he told me right off the bat, I wouldn't have given you a 5. Nobody rates a 5. Well, not you anyway, I thought, and things went downhill between us from that point. I put up with this legend in his own mind for a couple of years, and cleaned up after him much too often. I got a few more certifications in the meantime, and was scouting for the next opportunity when Jackass did us all a great favor and took another position himself. Small town IT has many great stories about this engagement. Hard to believe that he was an even bigger duck up at the next job, but he'd been hired as an actual director, at a company with an IT department bigger than ours, and was found lacking to say the least. I stayed at my company for another few years and then went to a more challenging job where I had a sweetheart of a guy for a manager. He came to me not long after I started and asked me about Jackass. Seems he was trying to get hired by one of the contracting companies that supplied us with some specialized services. My first reaction was to chuckle that Jackass would lower himself from director to grunt, because I knew the work he would be doing. But my second thought was a little darker. Jackass would be working at my facility. In my mind I started rewriting my resume, but I told my boss, as professionally as I could, well, I worked for Jackass for a time over at old company and we didn't see eye to eye. I think he lacks adequate planning skills and is a bit of a loose cannon. You should ask the place he left old company for. Which was entirely true. To my great relief, my boss said, well, we don't need that kind of grief around here, I'll ask them to submit another candidate. Like I said, sweetheart of a guy, I really missed him when he left. Unlike Jackass. I don't think Jackass ever heard the old saying, be careful who you step on while you're climbing the ladder, you might meet them again on your way back down. The next story is titled Being Player 1 is Far Too Much Power for a Person to Handle. I, 21F, was playing Kirby's Return to Dreamland with 3 of my friends over Parsec. It's not really relevant to the story, but all of them were guys. One of them was streaming, so naturally he was player 1. If you don't know, this game's camera always follows player 1's movements. If players 2 to 4 walk too far off screen, they'll get teleported back to player 1, and if player 1 dies, everyone gets sent back to the last checkpoint, while when others die, they simply can spend a life to respawn. Naturally, we got extremely competitive about everything. Who got the collectible, who got the copy ability, who killed the boss, who entered the level, and especially who got the kick-ass super ability that occasionally appeared. And there was a lot of betrayal, as all of the best game sessions with your homies should. But player 1, having the ability to control progression in a level, had the upper hand against everyone. He would run in the opposite direction of everyone else to make them teleport, fall in pits or die on purpose to reset progress, and catch rides with other players by riding on their back through the level only to steal the glory right at the end. Eventually, we had a vote to have this person overthrown as player 1, and I was elected instead. I had fully intended to play the game normally for once. But that power, it's just so intoxicating. Yes, I became player 1, with all the powers that entail that title. But I was also in a unique position. You see, this person was still streaming. It was a small audience, but it was an audience all the same. And I had been cucked out of getting the super ability too many times. My dictatorship didn't last long. The game was almost over anyway. But I made the impact I wanted. Historians still say that my reign over Dreamland was one of the worst ever, worse than the original dictator. The next story is titled Short Stories. It's been a minute since I had some tales to tell, but I think this collection of small things will be enough. Preemptive apologies for being on mobile. It is currently the off-season in our mostly tourist town and the most busy we've been since mid-September, as 10 rooms checked in out of 150 plus, so the stories have slowed down, especially after all of the Drama Hawk employees were fired. However, being night audit, security, breakfast, I still have a few tales, mostly of the crazies I've encountered on security at the hotel. I stumbled across a short man with long point nails, black with dirt, wild eyes, and dirty clothes, all black. He claimed his name was Lucifer, and he looked the part. He went on a long rant about how I have to die and he must slaughter me, because he can see the future and he knows that I am a demon, an angel. But demons are angels, and then he ends his rant by asking to use the lobby computer to watch adult videos. I tell him no. My next adventure is similar to the last, but slightly different. This time it was a woman that I saw digging through the recycling bin for shredded paper. I ask what she's doing, and she stares at me with eyes that just have a tiny spot for the pupil, and she keeps her eyes trained on me as she slowly stops. I ask again what she's doing and tell her she needs to leave if she isn't going to be getting a room here. She lets out a loud shriek and runs away. Maybe she was like a raccoon in human form or something. This last tale is mostly just an annoying coworker that either intentionally or unintentionally makes my job harder. This coworker is the last of the previous batch that was hired under old management that was using the hotel as a front to sell drugs and get money from pimps, long story, and her work ethic hasn't changed under new management. Let's call her Pepper. Pepper is upwards of an hour late every time she is supposed to come in after me. Nobody else, just me. It's to the point to where they don't ever schedule her after me anymore. She also is constantly making mistakes in the system, and just not really thinking about the stuff she does. When I got into work today, there was a man sitting in the lobby. I asked her about it and she said, he's just charging his phone. He'll call his boss once he can and his boss will pay for a room. How long has he been here? About an hour now. I then tell him to scram and he starts throwing a fit saying he is allowed to stay here because Pepper said he could. She also apparently gave permission for someone to sleep out in their car in the parking lot tonight, which is annoying having to argue with people who got permission from someone who can't give permission. At the end of the day, I'm still glad that my other coworkers are great and that it's so slow I spend more time playing Sudoku than I do working, even if I gotta deal with crazies occasionally. The next story is titled Huge Fight. Today a guy with a suit came in and asked for a key to his brother's room. I verify name, then call up to the room and see if he wants his brother to come up to the room. He said no, he'll come down. Immediately I know something is wrong. That's not his brother. They know each obviously since he knew this guy's brother's name, but they start fighting about money immediately and then it begins to get loud. I tell them take the conversation outside. So they do. Then I hear really loud screams and I look outside and see them fighting. The one guy almost pulled a knife out on the other. Immediately I'm calling the police. They arrive. I think everything is settled, but not even 10 minutes later this guy is looking inside my windows, because at this point I locked the door early, and is flicking the guest off, knocking, being belligerent. So I call back and tell him get off the property. If he comes back I'm gonna trespass him at this point. Finally the guy leaves. Come to find out from the one guy out was all over $600? Someone could have been stabbed over $600? That's pretty crazy. Doesn't make any sense to me. So if anyone comes in asking about his name or anything, I instructed the staff to say I don't see that person in the system. End. But question, what would you guys have done differently? If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and post some bear emojis in the comments.